Hello knitters, Barbara Benson here. I'm an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make videos here on my YouTube channel, Watch Barbara Knit. Make sure to check in the description notes below the video where you will find links to all of my online shenanigans, including how to get my patterns to make for yourself, how to join the Watch Barbara Knit Facebook group, how to support me on Patreon, and where to get the Watch Barbara Knit merchandise. Today, I am addressing a question, or it's kind of a question inspired by a pattern support email I received where there is someone knitting one of my scarves and they were looking for information on yarn durability. They were wanting to make a scarf. They were making it for a loved one who may not necessarily be taking the best care of it. It's going to get a lot of wear. It's a scarf. It's going to get worn. And they wanted to make sure that this piece that they made, the yarn is probably going to be a little bit expensive, and they want it to last a long time. So I wanted to talk about some of the elements that you need to take into consideration when selecting yarn with regards to its durability. And you guys know, I like to categorize things. So how I want to break this down and what I encourage you to be thinking about is when you're evaluating yarn and how you think it's going to hold up is the fiber content of the yarn and the structure of the yarn. What is its yarn structure? I've talked about both of these things before. I'll see if I can link to some of the videos, but we're talking about it in a very specific way. Now, first, fiber content. One of the things that people are usually pretty concerned about is pilling. And is a yarn going to pill? Because that's one of those things that makes a knitted garment look maybe not its best. Now, pilling is something that happens. And you can get depilling tools. You don't want the cutting ones, but they're like these stones that you just run it across and it pulls the pills off. And sometimes all a garment needs is to be depilled the first time and you're good. So always check that. But what is pilling? Pilling is when the fibers, the individual fibers in the yarn kind of poke out of their little column that they're supposed to be in. And from wear and tear, agitation, those little ends, they rub against each other and then they lock into each other and they make little pills. Okay? This tends to happen in areas where there's friction under the arms on garments. I have had a shawl that I made that I wore and then I carried a shoulder bag. It wore pills on my shoulder where my shoulder strap was. So any place where you're getting friction, any place where you're getting agitation, you're going to tend to get pilling if you have a yarn that is prone to pilling. So what fibers are prone to pilling? Well, it's most commonly associated with wool, but other fibers can pill. Cotton has been known to pill. And you have, a line, you have like a range of tendency to pill. And on one end, you have your softer yarns, your wools, but then as you go along there, fibers that are less likely to pill are ones like linen and silk and the wool that when you touch it, you go, ooh, itchy. That's going to be a wool that's not going to pill as much. When you're looking at alpacas, Surrey alpaca is less likely to pill. Mohair is less likely to pill. Now, these things are all less likely to pill because they have longer staple lengths. And what a staple length is the length of the individual fibers that are being spun together to make the yarn. What I said earlier is that pilling is the ends of those little fibers getting out of their yarn, they're out of their twist, rubbing against each other, making pills. So, stands to reason, the shorter the staple length, the more opportunities those ends have to get out, the more likely they are to get together and get all and end up with pills. The longer the fibers, right? The longer those fibers, the less ends, the fewer ends we have to stick out and get jiggy with other fiber ends. So it's about staple length. Unfortunately, the other thing that fiber length really has a lot to do with is softness. Your softer yarns tend to have shorter staple lengths. So when you're looking at merinos, when you're looking at your softer wools, they tend to have shorter staple and therefore they are more prone to being pilly. So you just have to take that in consideration. Sometimes a desire's like, I want a long wearing strong garment that isn't gonna pill, but I want it to be super soft. They don't work together particularly well. So sometimes you have to pick and choose. That is why looking at fiber blends can oftentimes be really useful. It's why you see silks blended into softer wools. It's why you see mixes so that you can help provide more strength and avoid that pilling. But as I said, cottons, and your cottons are going to be your softer cottons, your fluffier cottons, the ones that you're like, oh, I want to pet this. Well, as you pet it, it's agitating those fiber ends and you're making pills. So that's super fun times. So fiber length and what kind of fiber is in the yarn is going to have a lot to do with its longevity. Now, the other element is yarn structure. The less structured the yarn is, the more likely it is that it is going to pill. And also that makes for a not as strong yarn. The more plies it has, the more structure it has, the stronger your yarn is. It can stand up to more wear and tear. It can stand up. It can be load-bearing yarn, okay? And that is why when you're looking at a sock yarn that is specifically made for socks, which is really one of the biggest tests we put yarn through, they tend to be very tightly spun, and they tend to have nylon in them because nylon does not pill, and it does not tend to pill, and nylon brings a lot of strength to the table. So if we're on this end, the soft end, we have soft, it's fluffy, it's like got a lot of air in it. Unfortunately, that single ply, that loosely plied yarn, its lack of structure is what makes it wonderful and soft and floofy and amazing, but it's also what makes it very likely to pill and makes it not as strong as other yarns. A step up from that is like a loose 2-ply yarn. If you only have 2 plies, if they're both loosely spun, you've got a lot. If it's loose and it's just kind of hanging out, there's a lot of opportunity for the rub. So you get those little ends rubbing against each other, more opportunities for felting, more opportunities for pilling. So if it's on the loosely spun end, it's not going to be as strong, more likely to pill. As you add in plies and the plies get tighter, it's going to add strength and it's going to reduce the yarn's tendency to pill. Another really interesting thing that gets you kind of where you want to go is the chain construction, the chainettes, which are essentially little I-cord cages that they like blow fibers into and stuff. Interestingly enough, that is it's like a compromise, and it gives you a yarn that isn't going to pill as much because there's so much room in there. It's just all floofed out. I don't really understand how that works, but a chainette structure, those chain tube structures actually are going to be less tendency to pill. They do compress a lot, and they're really not what I would consider on the strong side. Like, you're not going to knit a pair of socks out of them. You're not going to make a market bag out of them. They are more on the delicate side of yarns. And unfortunately, when you think about luxury yarns, when you think about cashmeres and you think about angoras, most of those are definitely on the soft side, which means they're definitely on the needs more gentle care side. And it's definitely on the not going to stand up to heavy use and heavy wear and tear. Now, interestingly, mohair has a very long staple, and it's a pretty darn strong. It doesn't tend to pill. It's an interesting middle ground, but most mohairs are lace weight. So again, if it's tiny and skinny, it's not going to be very strong. It's tiny and skinny, but for what it is pretty strong. So if you are concerned about creating a finished piece that is going to be thrown in the back seat, it's going to be stuffed in a backpack, it's going to be worn, like really worn, you're going to go snowmobiling in it or something, you're going to want to steer away from what you would consider a luxury fiber. Soft isn't really going to be what you're going for as much. You're going to be looking for a yarn that has a lot of structure to it and is going to really stand up to the use. It's yarn structure, good fiber content, maybe so if you want to stay in the soft merino-y wool kind of category, probably going to want to go towards a superwash. Superwash really smooths out those fibers and makes it less likely to pill. It can still pill, but it makes it less likely to pill. And superwash, you might want to knit it a little denser than you typically would, because again, what we were talking about is it's the rub of the little ends. So if it's in like a loose stockinette, there's more opportunity for it to move around and rub against each other. If you knit a denser fabric, it's gonna last longer because it has less opportunity for that friction, which creates weak spots in your yarn. So I know that I cannot cover the incredible depth of this subject because every single yarn needs to be evaluated. Always, your best chance to figure out how it's going to work is swatch it. Make a little swatch of whatever it is you're planning on. Cram it in your backpack, cram it in a bag, abuse it. And that is going to tell you whether or not you want to invest the money into that yarn if that's the kind of wear you expect it to get. So look at the fiber content, look at the yarn structure, and decide if those things are appropriate for the kind of project that you are trying to make. If you had this question, I hope it helped you. I think I'm probably going to email this message to the person who sent me the question in the first place, and hopefully it is helpful to them. If you have any questions or anything that you might want to hear me ramble about in regards to knitting, fibers, yarns, and things like that, please let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Love to get ideas for new videos. I like talking about yarn and knitting if y'all hadn't noticed. So, and let me know what your experience, like if you've had an experience with a yarn that completely contradicts what I've said, let me know, because I am always open to learning and understanding more deeply the subjects that I am passionate about. If you like this video, please give it the thumbs up, click that like button. And if you would like to be notified whenever I upload a new video, please subscribe to my channel and select notifications. Click that little bell. Thank you so much.